We are live.
Excellent. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Executive Committee. I will call this meeting to order and begin with a land acknowledgement. At this time, I'd like to acknowledge that we meet on the traditional land of Treaty 6 territory and Métis homelands, and acknowledge the diverse Indigenous peoples whose ancestors' footsteps have marked this territory for centuries, such as the Cree, Dene, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Nakota Sioux, as well as Métis and Inuit, and now settlers from around the world. And with that, I will do a roll call. So Councillor Wright.
Good morning.
Good morning. Councillor Jans. Don't see Councillor Jans. Councillor Hamilton.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. And I believe Mayor Sohi will be joining us shortly. Okay, adoption of the agenda. Someone like to move that?
I'll move that the September 2023 Executive Committee agenda be adopted with the following changes. Replacement report attachments on item 7.1, Rapid Housing Initiative, round 3 recommendations and update, including the Community Services Report, attachments 1 and 4, and attachment 6, which will remain private pursuant to section 27. And the deletion of item 7.4, which is the bylaw to designate the boardwalk as a municipal historic resource, and item 7.5, which is the bylaw to designate the Revlon building as a municipal historic resource.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. Any questions? Okay, let's vote. I'm a yes.
Thank you, Councillor Salvador. We have all the votes.
Please display the vote. That is carried. Approval of the minutes. Councillor Wright, would you like to go ahead?
I move approval of the minutes from the August 30th, 2023 Executive Committee.
Thank you. Any errors or omissions? Any questions? No? Okay. Seeing none, please vote. I'm a yes.
Thank you, Councillor Salvador. And Mayor Sohi, we're just voting on approval of the minutes. Yes. Thank you, Mayor Sohi. We have 4 votes.
Please display the vote. That's carried. Thank you. And protocol items, none that I'm aware of. So we'll move to selection of items for debate. I'll look to the board. Councillor Hamilton?
I don't have questions on it, but I'll select item 7.1 as we have a speaker on the item.
Great, thank you. Councillor Wright?
And that was mine. I wasn't just as quick on the draw.
All right, I will select 7.2 and 7.3. Okay, seeing no one else on the boards, we've selected 7.1, 7.2, and 7.3. So we can vote on reports not selected for debate.
And was that yourself?
I'll move that, yep.
Thank you.
And please vote.
I'm a yes.
I'm also a yes.
Thank you, Councillor Salvador. Thank you, Mayor Sohi. We have 4 votes.
Please display the vote.
We seem to be experiencing some technical difficulty. It did carry 4-0.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Clerk Norton, would you like to just reflect back what we've accomplished today?
Absolutely. Thank you, Councillor Salvador. This morning, Executive Committee has approved the recommendations of the following items without debate. Item 5.1, Edmonton Soccer Association Facility Access, Maintenance and Performance has a revised due date of November 1st, 2023. Item 5.2, GEF Seniors Housing Annual Financing Reporting has a revised due date of November 1st, 2023. 5.3, Office Tower Conversions with a revised due date of October 13th, 2023. 5.4, Dedicated Climate Fund with a revised due date of November 1st, 2023. And the recommendations in the following three items. 7.6, Bylaw 20572, Bylaw to designate the St. Francis of Assisi Frere, St. Anthony's College, St. Francis of Assisi Church as a Municipal Historic Resource, Amendment Number 2. 7.7, Bylaw 20573, Bylaw to designate the William Buster Residence as a Municipal Historic Resource, Amendment Number 1. And item 7.8, Bylaw 20574, Bylaw to designate the Rossdale Brewery as a Municipal Historic Resource, Amendment Number 1.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Councillor Salvador, for starting the meeting and proceeding with it. Next on, we are to request to speak. We have one, right? And that is on 7.1, the Rapid Housing Initiative. Councillor Hamilton, you want to move that?
Yeah, I'll move that we hear from the speaker in panels where appropriate on item 7.1, the Rapid Housing Initiative, Cam McDonald from Right at Home Housing Society, who I think is remote and is for questions only, as I understand. Yes.
Correct.
Thanks.
Okay. All right, so please vote.
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Salvador. We have 4 votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried. Request for specific time on the agenda, none. Councillor inquiries? Nope. Reports to be dealt with at a different meeting, none. Request to reschedule the reports, none. And, okay. Unfinished business, none. We are on to our public reports. So the first one is 7.1, Rapid Housing Initiative, around 3 recommendations and update. And I see our city folks walking up to the front.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Stacey Galatly, Branch Manager for Social Development, and we're here today to seek Council's approval of budget adjustments, land sales, and subsidy affordable housing agreements required to move forward with the 3rd round of the Rapid Housing Initiative. With me today for questions is Crystal Kujener, Director of Affordable Housing and Homelessness, Stuart Carrick, Manager of Project Development for Affordable Housing and Homelessness, and Chris Thiessen, Director of Property Transactions for Real Estate. Next slide. Oh.
That's strange. We can share it with you quickly. Can you share it with Erin Norton?
What's that?
The presentation, so she doesn't have it.
Can I share this one?
Yeah.
Our apologies while we get that queued up. Excellent, thank you. So I'd like to start by providing a bit of background on the Rapid Housing Initiative, or RHI. RHI was launched in 2020 and is delivered by the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation under its National Housing Strategy. RHI was created to support the rapid construction of affordable housing with a focus on housing people who have experienced homelessness or who are at risk of homelessness or houselessness. Through two previous rounds, the city has leveraged RHI funding to support the development of 446 units of supportive housing. Round 1 included 210 units, and Round 2 included 236 units. The Rapid Housing Initiative has been central to advancing the city plan objective of ending homelessness. In November of 2022, the CMHC announced a third round of the Rapid Housing Initiative, which will disperse $1.5 billion through two program streams, the city stream and the project stream. In response, administration prepared an investment plan which detailed how the city intended to apply an initial funding sum of $12,533,074 allocated to the city under the city streams of the grant program, as well as a list of additional city-approved projects for funding consideration through the project stream of the grant funding program. The investment plan included 3 city-led and 5 partner-led projects and was approved by Council for submission to CMHC in March. Next slide, please. The CMHC has now confirmed RHI 3 funding for 2 of the 8 projects that were presented in the investment plan. This includes $12.5 million in funding allocated to Edmonton through the city stream to support the Hollywood Permanent Supportive Housing, the PSH. $2.7 million through the project stream for the St. Paul's Legacy projects. The remaining 6 projects were not funded. In addition to the funding provided by CMHC, the Alberta Social Housing Corporation has confirmed $4.9 million through the Affordable Housing Partnership Program to support the successful projects. That includes $3.99 million for Hollywood PSH and $0.9 million for St. Paul's Legacy project. Next slide, please. We would now like to provide some of the context in regards to the approved RHI 3 projects. The development of the Hollywood PSH is being led by the city. The 4-story development will be located on a parcel of city-owned land in the neighborhood of Hollywood and feature 63 residential units, including 12 barrier-free units, and space for associated support and counseling services at a total project cost of $28.5 million. The development will prioritize individuals experiencing homelessness or at risk of experiencing homelessness. Upon completion of the development, and associated land will be transferred to Homeward Trust, who will operate the facility. This is the same process that we used with success for the first 5 supportive housing sites. Next slide, please. The St. Paul's Legacy project, led by Right at Home Society, involves the rehabilitation of the existing St. Paul's Lutheran Church in King Edward Park and the construction of a significant addition to the building. 2 wheelchair accessible units will be housed within the rehabilitated church, while 9 new townhouse units will be included in the addition. The development will prioritize newcomers and individuals with physical disabilities. Next slide, please. These 2 projects will result in the 74 new affordable housing units with a total contribution of $15.4 million from CMHC, $4.9 million from the ASHC, and $12.6 million from the City of Edmonton. Next slide, please. In order to proceed with round 3 of the Rapid Housing Initiative, we are seeking Council's approval in relation to 3 key decision points. Firstly, approval of the budget adjustments to add funding from the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation and the Alberta Social Housing Corporation to the city's capital and operating budgets as per recommendation 1 and 2. Next, approval of the sale of Hollywood PSH to the Homeward Trust and subsidy funding affordable housing agreements for the Hollywood PSH and St. Paul's Legacy project as per recommendations 3 through 6. And finally, approval to maintain the privacy of the advice from officials and privileged information contained in Attachment 7. Next slide, please. With that, we'd be happy to welcome any questions that you may have. And if you have any questions as it relates to the confidential information included in Attachment 7, we'll need to move into private for that. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for the presentation. At this time, I will ask if committee members or council members have any questions to to the speaker register to speak Cam McDonald from Right at Home Housing Society. Because he's only signed up to answer questions. So any questions, colleagues? Councillor Wright?
Is he there? Oh, okay, sorry.
Joining virtually. Yeah.
Oh, right. I'm just, so the Right at Home is the one that's taking over the St. Luke's, right?
Yes, we will be owning the church lands and then doing the renovations and construction of the townhomes and owning the project and operating it as affordable housing for 40 years. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just wondering, with it being associated with the church, is there any concern that some people might not want to stay there?
No, I don't think that will be the case. The congregation ended many years ago.
Okay.
But the building itself was really well built, and it's accepted in the community, like it as a community center, more than a religious place of worship. So there's little mini folk festivals that take place there, and that sort of thing. And that's what we're aiming to turn that large space into, is more of a community hub. It's just having I guess the original structure from the 40s kind of sitting there as a legacy to what was there at one time in the community.
Okay, and that legacy, I'm just wondering, not so much, I'm not worried about the structure, I'm more worried about those that maybe have suffered trauma from residential schools that were operated by some religious groups. Would that be traumatic to anyone?
Given my experience, I don't think it would be in this case. I would be surprised if it was, but I can't know for sure what kind of trauma some family members might be having with regard to residential schools, but I don't think that would add to it. I think our supportive management model and the connections we keep in the community with Indigenous serving groups would help at least not worsen and help overcome some of that.
Okay, and what sort of supportive services are going to be available at this site?
Well, if we're housing an Indigenous family, we would rely on the support services of Niganan Housing Ventures, for example, who's a very close partner of ours. And of course, if it's a refugee family, we would be working closely with the multicultural health brokers and Islamic Family Social Services to help give them the cultural supports they need to help keep them safe, secure, and welcome in their home.
Okay, and these would sort of be outsourced, they're not on site, right?
Yeah, they would not be on site yet.
Okay, that's all the questions I had. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councillor Wright. I see no more questions, Cam. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. All the hard work you and your organizations putting in to support Edmonton's houseless population.
Well, thank you kindly.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Now questions to administration. Councillor Hamilton, you exempt to this.
I had no questions. I just wanted to grab the speaker.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions, colleagues? Okay. I'll start. Just have a few questions, right? So you said for phase 1 and phase 2 of RHI, we were able to build 446 units, right?
That's correct.
And this approval of these two projects will add another 74? 63 plus 11, right? Okay. And the city contribution, does city contribution also include the land purchase agreement?
For the Hollywood project, yes.
For the Hollywood, okay. Okay. So it's, okay, got it. It's cash and land contribution, right? Okay. And the Holyrood will be run by Homer Trust?
It'll be run by an operator contracted by Homer Trust.
Yeah, so we will transfer it over to Homer Trust, then they contract to.
That's correct,
Okay,
yeah.
got it. It's the similar way that other RHI. Unfortunately, we were not successful under the project stream, other than I think $3.4 million that we got for one of the projects, 11 units, right? Can you shed some light in the public view why we were not successful?
I think the feedback that we've received from CMHC is that all of the projects we submitted were very strong and compelling projects, but there is, widespread demand across Canada for the funds, for a relatively small amount of funds. And I think this round, they really prioritized funding proponents that had not previously received rapid housing funding. So we've, heard informally that a lot of the projects that were funded in Alberta went to entities that had not received RHI funding previously. So that's, I think, a big part of the rationale why we didn't receive it this time.
Mm-hmm. I also heard that Indigenous-led projects were prioritized under RHI 3, but we also had Indigenous-led projects submitted through our proposal, right? So did we get any insight from CMHC, like why would they not be?
All we heard is that they prioritized, several projects that are going to be built in First Nation communities on reserve.
Okay, so that was another criteria that Indigenous-led, not only Indigenous-led, but also on the reserve. Okay, good. Yeah, and I am disappointed. I'm pretty sure we all are disappointed, but we'll continue our advocacy to the feds. Okay. Councillor Salvador.
Yeah, thanks so much. Excited to see these moving forward, but I also share the mayor's disappointment, and I'm sure all of our disappointment around not getting that full ask. I guess are there some ongoing conversations about additional rounds of RHI? Is it too early to tell? Would love to see RHI eventually become a permanent, ongoing program. Any insights there?
I would just offer for sure it's premature to speculate on what exactly might be coming when, but I can say that when the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, which was sort of the lead in initiating the advocacy around rapid housing, or for the type of program that rapid housing ended up being, when they were advocating for it, they asked for it to be ongoing and a permanent program. And we know that the government of Canada is hearing that feedback from across the country, and we also know that we're not the only city by far that's disappointed with the outcome of the project stream decisions. So there's certainly a lot of pressure nationally on the government to look at doing future rounds.
Okay, that's really good to hear, and obviously, strength when there's collective advocacy pushing from all fronts, so that's excellent. And then just a question on the Holyrood site. I've just been getting some questions from community around just what are things going to look like in terms of next steps? Will there be additional conversations with neighbors, more information sent out, that sort of thing? Just so I can share that back with neighbors.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Councillor. They should have received notices on construction fairly recently, if not very soon. We have had conversations with the Community League, and we've also included our contact information in that construction notice to reach out to supportive housing at edmonton.ca, and we are very open to having that channel conversation and information flow. We have taken some feedback regarding wanting some more information and opportunities to provide with specific stakeholders in the neighborhood, and we're looking at opportunities with Homer Trust to open up channels of information and conversation with the neighborhood, neighbors, and Community League.
Fantastic. That's great to hear, and anything I can do to help with that, I'm there. So that's it for me. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Salvador. Councillor Wright.
Thank you. For the Holyrood site, you've indicated 12 barrier-free. Are any of those like 2 bedrooms, or would it just be for individuals?
They're all 1 bedroom.
They're all 1 bedroom? Okay. Do we have, like, in supply any that are available, that are accessible for families?
Barrier-free family units?
Yeah.
For
Oh,
For sure, there's some they exist within the affordable housing supply in Edmonton.
Okay.
We've heard through our housing needs assessment we need more of them, and that's something we're looking at in the new housing strategy. But that there certainly is a supply currently.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. I think that's all I have. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Tang.
Great, thank you very much. And apologies if I missed this just in your earlier comment, but for the applications that we weren't successful, will we reapply and what's the timeline?
That's a good question, Councillor Tang. For the city-led projects, our intent would be to resubmit those through future rounds of rapid housing. But it's important to note that for all the projects on our project stream list, both the city and the province at this point are not removing their contributions. We're keeping the contributions, and while we work to see if there's other solutions to close the funding gap left by them not being successful in this round. So our team is actively engaging with those proponents and working to try and find strategies to move as many of those projects forward, regardless, essentially. And if we can't find a strategy, then yeah, the intent would be, where possible, to resubmit for future rounds of RHI if they're offered.
Gotcha. And since they're not offered, we don't really have a timeline for that, right?
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct. I mean, the city-led projects are, obviously they're in our control. So I think our intent would be to try and maximize the funding contribution there. So, but with the partner-led projects that, could be at risk, we're working really hard to see if we can find an interim solution for them.
Thank you. And wondering, where does these two projects put us in terms of our 2023-2026 housing goals? If you can just remind me of some of those numbers.
These would actually be the first ones within this new investment cycle. And so we'll be coming to committee and council again shortly with also the
strategy.
The strategy, but also with our latest rounds from our AHIP grant programs, both from the Indigenous stream and our more traditional stream. And so you'll see those numbers increasing more very soon, but right now, these would be for this investment cycle, the 63 and the 11.
But there is a target goal already set, isn't there? I thought there was.
There is a goal of 2,700 new and refurbished. And so when we look at the refurbished, we were quite successful through the CMHC in getting money to do that refurbishment. And we're nearly, it was 1,955 units. And so when we add those to this, we're already over 2,000. But that's also something that we're taking a pause with, and with our strategy to look back and say what should be our new numbers that we should be trying to reach within this investment cycle.
Okay, yeah, I look forward to when some of those future reports will come and for that bigger discussion. I was curious because I know the cost per unit has come up in past applications. So currently, I think for both projects, we're looking at what, like 500,000 per unit. Is that right?
On the Holyrood one, it is a little bit below that, but there's also different considerations on how we are building that building versus a traditional, what I'll call stick-built 4-story building. This is being built for a permanency of an infrastructure, so we're using concrete and steel. We're also looking at some of the finishings that we apply on those individual rooms to make sure that they're durable and will be sustainable over time. As well, we have additional common spaces within these areas for the supports to be added. And so when they're bundled up into the space on a per room basis, it looks higher than it is comparative to just what the actual square footage would be for the living space. And so when we look at the living space component, we're very comparable to where we were on RHI 1, including where we look at some of the different costs have gone up through that time. We have found some different efficiencies in design and lessons learned from that first one. On the St. Paul's Legacy project, there is different funding that is included within the formula for CMHC, including the contributions from the church that are included within that, that make those numbers a little bit harder to discern exactly based on what we've shown today, a per unit or a square footage basis. But they are coming in comparable to a traditional townhouse when you look at solely on the construction basis.
Okay, yeah, that's actually quite helpful. Because I was wondering, if that's just kind of on the radar of the team to kind of watch for that cost, and when we're building, in bulk, what kind of economies of scale are we actually, saving and or part of that consideration. Um, I guess I'm out of time. Great, thank you so much. I'm very looking forward to these projects come to fruition.
Thank you, Councillor Tang. I think that breakdown of the cost is very, very important because otherwise people see at, market housing, apartment building, you can build for cheaper than supportive housing. But people don't understand that why the kind of material that's being used and the durability of the space and also the common area that, So I think that construction, if you compare, I think you used, if you compare construction to construction cost, or then it's comparable, right? Okay, all right. Good, thank you. Councillor Salvador?
Yeah, thank you. Happy to move the recommendation in the report, if now is an appropriate time.
Absolutely.
Great, so I'll move that
Absolutely.
Executive Committee recommend to City Council that capital profile 19-90-4100 affordable housing land acquisition and site development be increased by $3,993,681, $1,597,472 in 2023, $2,396,209 in 2024, to recognize the anticipated receipt of Affordable Housing Partnership Program funding from Alberta Social Housing Corporation to be spent on a multi-year basis to fund Project 1 as outlined in Attachment 1 of the September 20th, 2023 Community Services Report CS 01751. 2, that the 2023 Revenue and Expenditure Operating Budget for the Social Development Branch be increased by $2,843,538 on a one-time basis to recognize receipt of Rapid Housing Initiative Project Stream funding from Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation to be spent on a multi-year basis to fund Project 2 as outlined in Attachment 1 of the September 20th, 2023 Community Services Report CS 01751. 3, that the sale of land in Holyrood from the City of Edmonton to Homeward Trust Holdings Company in respect of Project 1 on the terms and conditions as outlined in Attachment 2 of the September 20th, 2023 Community Services Report CS 01751 be approved, and that the agreement be in the form and content acceptable to the City Manager. 4, that an affordable housing agreement between the City of Edmonton and Homeward Trust Holding Company in respect of Project 1 on the terms and conditions as outlined in Attachment 3 of the September 20th, 2023 Community Services Report CS 01751 be approved, and that the agreement be in the form and content acceptable to the City Manager. 5, that a subsidy funding agreement between the City of Edmonton and Right at Home Housing Society not to exceed $3,533,359 in respect of Project 2 on the terms and conditions as outlined in Attachment 4 of the September 20th, 2023 Community Services Report CS 01751 be approved, and that the agreement be in the form and content acceptable to the City Manager. 6, that an affordable housing agreement between the City of Edmonton and Right at Home Housing Society in respect of Project 2 on the terms and conditions as outlined in Attachment 5 of the September 20th, 2023 Community Services Report CS 01751 be approved, and that the agreement be in the form and content acceptable to the City Manager. And 7, that Attachment 6 of the September 20th, 2023 Community Services Report CS 01751 remain private pursuant to Section 27 of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor. Now I will open the floor for committee members or council members to speak to the motion. Maybe I'll start very, very briefly. When we were there for the construction kickoff a couple of weeks ago at the Holyrood site, after the event ended, I just went over to a house in front of the site, and there was a couple sitting outside having coffee, and we started talking, and then they start, talking about the project and asking when the construction will start, when the project will finish, when will people start moving, and it was really heartwarming to hear them say that they're looking forward to welcoming their new neighbors into their community, and that as neighbors they will welcome them to come over, have coffee with them. Right? I think sometimes you get caught up in believing that communities don't embrace people into their communities, and I think overall Edmontonians are very welcoming people, and they understand that there are people who are struggling, and they want to be part of the solution, and they want to be helpful in that. So it was really nice to see that compassion being reinforced by that couple, right? So I just want to share that story with you, and it's it's not always yes, we face opposition, and we need to make sure that concerns are dealt with, and operators do a good job. And if they don't, there's mechanism to deal with that, right? But I think overall, I just wanted to share that positive interaction that I had. So good, yeah.
And I'll just briefly close on that. Thank you so much, Mayor Sohi, for sharing those words, and that's been my experience as well. As this project has started to sort of bubble up in the neighborhood, absolutely there's been questions, but the overwhelming message that I'm hearing from neighbors and residents is that there is an urgent need for us to take action on affordable housing and supportive housing in particular, that is not just a roof over someone's head, but able to connect them with the supports and services they need. And projects like this one are exactly what we need. So very grateful that the federal government has recognized that need and is willing to support projects like this one. As we discussed, it's not enough, and we'll look forward to future rounds and future opportunities to future rounds to be able to do even more. And I would say not only the federal government, but being able to have the support of the province has also been really critical in being able to advance these. And of course, I want to take a moment to thank the entire team at the city who has been working on this just tirelessly, and really looking forward to seeing this project start to take shape in community and welcoming those new neighbors. Thanks so much.
Thank you. We have now motion, so please vote.
Councillor Jans?
In favor.
Thank you. We have 5 votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried. So congratulations to our team out there, and keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, next one, we are on to 7.2, revenue source for transit, potential risk and implementation, and intergovernmental advocacy. We'll go to our administration for a presentation.
Good morning, Executive Committee. My name is Milat Petagera, Principal Advisor for Budget Planning and Development. Presenting with me today is Yetunde Oki, Chief Advisor, Policy and Coordination for Intergovernmental Affairs. With us to answer committee's questions are our colleagues from Edmonton Transit Service and the Integrated Infrastructure Services and Urban Planning and Economy Departments. Next slide. In response to a motion passed at the April 19th, 2021 City Council meeting, administration presented the April 13th, 2022 City Operations Report, Mass Transit System, Sustainable Funding and Service Growth. The report outlined a suite of 10 revenue generation tools that are employed across North America and evaluated them for alignment with City of Edmonton and City Plan goals. The analysis resulted in a short list of tools that could be further explored for potential implementation, and the report also suggested that no single tool could provide for all of Edmonton's future transit financial needs. A mix of strategies would offer greater resiliency. In response to this report, on April 19, 2022, City Council directed administration to conduct further analysis on the suite of shortlisted tools and explore shared advocacy opportunities towards legislative change for new transit revenue tools. Next slide. Before embarking on a revenue tools discussion, there first needed to be an understanding of what ETS's revenue needs are and the magnitude of funding shortfall going forward. It's important to understand the magnitude of the funding gap to determine which revenue tools are most realistic and viable to fund the shortfall. Administration conducted financial scenario analysis over the 2024 to 2033 forecast period, modeling 2 potential transit service futures. These financial scenarios were based on the most reasonable assumptions at the time and are for financial modeling purposes only. They should not be interpreted as budgetary figures, and actual financial figures may differ should the underlying assumptions evolve. The first scenario was the maintained service level scenario, which holds 2022 service hours per capita relatively constant until 2033. The second scenario was the gross service level scenario, which had significant bus fleet growth to increase service hours per capita within the constraints of limited transit garage capacity in the near term. Both scenarios assume a satellite garage lease is undertaken in 2025, but with different rates of bus fleet growth. The maintained service level scenario acquires 40 buses over the 3-year 2025 to 27 period, whereas the gross service level scenario acquires all 40 buses in 2025. For modeling purposes, a new growth transit garage is assumed operational in 2031 in the maintained service level scenario and 2029 in the gross service level scenario. The maintained service level scenario sees the addition of 70 new buses between 2031 and 2033, whereas the gross service level scenario sees the addition of 375 new buses between 2029 and 2033. Over the 10-year forecast term, the maintained service level scenario requires $180.7 million in capital funding for new growth buses, whereas the gross service level scenario requires $692.5 million. In addition to this, in order to put these growth buses into operational service, the maintained service level scenario requires $70 million in annual ongoing operating funding by 2033, whereas the gross service level scenario requires $174 million in annual ongoing operating funding by 2033. Next slide. To best identify which revenue tools may be applied toward the operating and capital funding shortfalls of the 2 transit service scenarios, administration further analyzed the 10 revenue generation tools put forward in the April 13, 2022 report against 5 criteria. First, does the city have the authority to implement this tool? How can the city implement this tool? Can the revenue tool provide stable annual funding? Can the revenue tool provide sufficient levels of funding? And is the revenue tool viable and/or desirable for transit funding? In addition to assessing these 10 tools, administration also assessed 24 additional revenue tools available or potentially available to the city against these same 5 criteria. These 5 criteria were designed to determine which revenue tools can provide long-term, sustainable, predictable revenue for transit that are within the city's control to levy and which conform to financial best practices. Next slide. The assessment criteria was applied to all 34 revenue tools. The most common reasons revenue tools were flagged as non-viable for transit funding were: the city has no legislative authority to use the tool. To use the tool would first require the province to change its legislation. For example, the city cannot levy an excise or sales tax on motor fuels without the province first changing the legislation to grant the city authority to do so. 2, using the tool would work against or counteract other city plan goals. For example, a benefit area tax, which would see higher residential tax rates near LRT and transit stations. This would disincentivize infill development and redevelopment and ownership near LRT stations. 3, revenue opportunities are limited from a sufficiency and stability perspective. In other words, the tool would not generate enough funds for transit purposes, or it would not generate stable funding for transit purposes. 4, revenue already used for other purposes, so diverting those funds towards transit service would produce a funding shortfall elsewhere in the city. For example, investment earnings are already allocated toward capital project financing. Diverting these revenues towards transit funding would produce capital budget shortfalls. 5, use of the tool would counteract financial best practices. For example, parking fees are user fees charged for curbside and other parking. Best practices suggest that user fees should be used to defray the cost of the service for which the consumer is paying the fee and not be applied to general revenues or to fund some other service. Furthermore, emerging practices also suggest that parking fees should be used to efficiently manage parking demand and balance parking supply with demand. And 6, implementing the revenue tool for transit funding would contravene Canadian case law. An example of this is applying revenues from a regulatory charge, such as a license fee, toward transit service. Revenues from regulatory fees can only be applied to finance the regulatory program. Next slide. Upon filtering each of the 34 revenue tools through these 5 criteria, the assessment found that only 6 are potentially viable for transit funding. These include dedicated transit funding, which is a property tax funding strategy with annual tax increases that are earmarked for transit operating and or capital expenditures on an ongoing basis. Property tax, which is simply the tax levied on the assessed value of a property. Local improvement tax, which is the tax levied on benefiting properties to finance the cost of a local improvement. User fees, which are fees charged in exchange for public services and include all transit fare products levied on consumers either in advance or at time of boarding. And development charges and off-site levies, which are charges levied on developers imposed at time of subdivision or development permit. The funding shortfalls in scenarios 1 and 2 could be addressed through a combination of several of the listed revenue tools. The capital funding shortfall in both scenarios could be addressed through any of these 6 revenue tools. However, only a dedicated transit levy, general property tax increases, and incremental transit fare increases can be used to fund operating costs and therefore the operating funding shortfall. The capital needs in both scenarios will require funding support from other orders of government and or authority from the provincial government to levy new revenue tools. Next slide. On this slide, we'll take a closer look at the 3 property tax-based revenue tools and summarize a few of the opportunities and challenges associated with them. Both general property tax increases and dedicated transit funding are stable and predictable within the city's control and provide sufficient levels of funding. Both of these tools will, however, place additional strain on the property tax base. Consideration should be given to overall tax room and the tax tolerance of property owners. Dedicated transit funding is essentially a funding strategy with multi-year tax increases earmarked for transit. Applying such a strategy would likely increase the share of tax support relative to user fees for funding transit operations. Council Policy C624, Fiscal Policy for Revenue Generation, puts forth the benefiter pays principle, where for services that directly benefit the consumers of the service, user fees should be charged to those consumers to cover their fair share of service costs. Should dedicated transit funding be advanced, consideration would be required on whether that shift would be an equitable distribution of costs between transit riders and the property tax base at large. City Council may on its own initiative propose a local improvement. A local improvement tax can only be used for capital projects and has the potential to provide sufficient and stable funding depending on the size of the benefiting area and the improvement project being considered. Too large of an improvement project would result in a high local improvement tax on the benefiting properties. Local improvement taxes would create tax differentials across similar properties depending on whether they were inside or outside of the benefiting area. The location of a local improvement tax would also need to be considered in the context of the city plan, as some locations may disincentivize infill and redevelopment. While local improvement taxes are a potential funding option, a local improvement can be petitioned against by affected property owners. If the sufficient thresholds are met, Council cannot proceed with the local improvement project. slide. On this slide, we'll take a closer look at the three non-tax-based revenue tools. User fees, or transit fares, are also a revenue tool within the city's control. Levying transit fares aligns with Council Policy C624, Fiscal Policy for Revenue Generation, which states that where direct benefits are provided to service consumers, revenues are raised from those consumers to recover, in whole or in part, the cost of the service. Transit fares allow for a fair distribution of service costs between users of the service and the property tax base at large. However, consideration needs to be given to transit riders' ability and willingness to pay. There are limits to how high transit fares can be priced due to demand price elasticities. Too high of transit fares has the potential to reduce demand for the service. Development charges and off-site levies can provide for growth infrastructure in new subdivisions and neighborhoods. These tools can only be applied for capital projects. They are also only potentially viable on greenfield developments due to the consistent development of Edmonton's greenfield neighborhoods. With development charges and off-site levies, consideration should be given for economic, land development, and housing market impacts. Too high of a levy rate can have unintended negative spillover effects on the housing and real estate markets. With that, I'll pass it over to my colleague, Yutunde.
So essentially, there are two main provincial advocacy options that the city can pursue. One is to continue to advocate for adequate, stable, and predictable levels of capital funding through various grant programs. And we have already been doing this through our pre-budget submissions, letters to, and meetings with provincial officials, and we will continue to further amplify these efforts. The other is through reopening conversations with the provincial government around new revenue tools, or allowing us to use existing revenue tools for transit funding purposes. Given the history of our advocacy and the current political and economic realities, the second option may be less feasible. Should we pursue this route, we will have to get our intermunicipal and regional partners on board. Of note, AB Minis currently has no ongoing advocacy work in support of new sources of municipal revenue. And on the federal side, we have natural allies in our big city partners who are facing similar challenges with their transit system. Utilizing our leadership role with the Federation of Canadian Municipalities and our participation in the Big City Mayors Caucus, we can continue to advocate to the federal government for a new municipal funding framework that recognizes the modern role of cities. With the imminent announcement of the Permanent Transit Fund, we can continue to advocate to the federal government alongside our big city peers to ensure the new fund is flexible. Next slide. Regardless of party, the provincial government has been historically unwilling to amend its legislation to allow new taxation and revenue generating tools for municipalities. The Government of Canada has historically provided funding to support municipal transit infrastructure needs through a range of grant programs. And very soon, the federal government will implement the Canada Permanent Public Transit Fund, which will provide annual funding to support municipalities' transit capital needs. Both orders of government have traditionally been unwilling to provide ongoing operating support for municipal transit operations. While operating funding was provided during the pandemic, we have heard from both orders of government not to expect funding for transit operations in the future. In discussing advocacy opportunities, we need to face the reality that both orders of government will not welcome any measures such as additional municipal taxes or levies that could potentially impact affordability for taxpayers, including increasing the cost of new home development, and particularly at this time. And this concludes our presentation. We're happy to take your questions.
Thank you so much for the presentation. And we don't have any public speakers on this, so we can directly go to questions of administration at this time. And Councillor Salvador, you can to this, right?
Yeah, thank you so much, and thanks for the presentation and the comprehensive report. Yeah, I'll just dive into a few questions, and maybe just for clarity, just around user fees. Can you just remind me, there's already changes that are underway that Council's already approved for user fees, correct?
Yes, Councillor, there is a fare price increase in 2025 for transit fares, about 2% across most fare products.
Okay, thanks so much. That was really my only question about fares. So, you know, I'm just thinking about our city plan goal of 50% mode shift, and I'm having a hard time seeing how we will achieve that if we're looking at anything other than growth. Like, have we done an analysis that says, you know, will we achieve that goal if we're just on a maintain track, or is growth necessary in order to achieve those targets?
So we have done reports and research in the past. We know that one of the greatest levers of increasing transit ridership is investing in service over other tools we have. And so I would say not keeping up certainly would not help us achieve those ridership and mode shift goals. There's other levers that can occur on the policy side around other modes to also encourage transit and active modes, but specifically towards transit, certainly investing in service is our opportunity.
Okay, so when I look at scenario 2, I guess if we're aiming for anything lower than scenario 2, do we have a shot at meeting those targets?
I would hazard to say I don't think so. I think we know that between 2005 and 2015 household travel survey that the modal split for transit was about the same, and so if we keep even just keeping up with the current level of service, we're not going to have that impact on mode shift that we're seeking through the city plan.
Okay, that's really helpful, and yeah, I think an important reality that we're faced with right now, if we are intending to meet those goals. I'm going to ask a bigger question here. With the desire for certainty and stability and predictability, has there ever been contemplation of a transit funding formula?
So, not yet. We haven't really looked at the concept of a transit funding formula specifically. The way we're doing it through the budget process is we're kind of determining what the net operating requirement is for ETS services, and we're kind of basing our general tax levy increase for transit based off of that. So we haven't considered a funding formula for transit. We do have other funding kind of dedicated funding sources within the operating budget that we have, and just in general principle, typically what we're doing with our kind of expenditures is it's kind of an informal formula where we are considering population and inflation growth in most of our budgets as a starting point. So in a way it's considered, but not a formal funding formula.
Right. And I guess in what cases would it be appropriate to use that type of mechanism? Like I look at historic funding for transit, and it doesn't seem to be keeping pace. And if there was something that was in place, like would that have ensured that there was at least that incremental growth with population, or no? And I know we're talking in theoretical here.
Yeah, I know it's a lot of theory and principle here. I mean that's a consideration for sure. I think you also have to look at your service levels for transit, so it's not an automatic that it always should be going with population and inflation. So it's a consideration, but I think that's one of the things you'd have to consider if you put in a transit funding formula.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your thoughts on that and entertaining the theoretical conversation there. I also wanted to ask about options for a dedicated levy. Can someone just walk me through how a dedicated levy could be phased in? Like, if we were looking to sort of ramp up, because it looks like in 2029, that's where we really see that growth ramping up. Could it be phased in? Does it need to be a constant? What options could be on the table?
So I think it's a discussion we would have to have, and a lot of considerations go into that. But so there is a 10-year dedicated tax levy scenario kind of option that's kind of presented in the report. So you can see each of them results in a different kind of it's a phased approach for a dedicated levy. So I mean, we'd probably have to do a more refined analysis to figure out what the actual net operating requirements would be. These are just forecasted models, so we could that would have to factor into it, and then we can figure out what a good phased approach would be for a dedicated levy.
Okay.
But yeah, that's typically the way a dedicated levy works.
Well, I'm out of time. I am interested in that. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Salvador. Councillor Wright.
Thank you. Just to follow up on a few of Councillor Salvador's. Sarah, you'd indicated that the fares are going to increase 2%. Are our income thresholds going to increase as well to qualify for the no fare?
So we did apply that increase to all products, including the Ride Transit program. So it goes up by $1 in 2025. The thresholds don't change, but of course, people's income, the thresholds are percentage of your income, and so as incomes also, if they increase over time, then that would support that.
So there will be some compensation or allowance for lower income levels to still get reduced fares.
Yeah, it still remains at 35% of the adult fare. It goes up, according to our fare policy, the low income is 35 or 50%, depending on the tiers related to the adult monthly pass. So everything's really grounded in the adult monthly pass, and then everything, adult, seniors, low income, are discounts to that price point.
But the tiers don't change? So if somebody qualified at $30,000 a year, that's still going to be $30,000 a year?
That would still be the same.
We wouldn't up that to $30,600 or?
That's not currently the plan,
Okay.
no. Yeah.
Okay. Because then, I mean, I think, you know, are we doing a disservice then to those that probably use transit the most?
Yes, I hear your concern, Councillor. That's maybe one piece to consider if that impacts that group.
Okay.
I should just add one positive piece in that 2025 is we are decreasing the youth fares, so that comes in line with the policy. So both youth and seniors are meant to be 65% of the adult, and we'll achieve that for youth in 2025, which is a good piece.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's good news. Then I'm looking at the local improvement. I think you'd mentioned that would be only for greenfield development.
Councillor, local improvement could be applied anywhere in the city, though the report states that consideration should be given on some unintended effects of a local improvement. In certain locations, it could have the effect of maybe disincentivizing redevelopment or infill in the redeveloping area.
Okay. Like the only thing that I can think of that's not greenfield would be maybe Blatchford, because it would be that specific area, then that would gain that access to LRT.
That's right, yeah. It could be applied anywhere in the city, but the impacts would need to be considered.
Okay. And then, like with the dedicated transit funding, and development, I guess the development charges would be similar to the ARA for roadways, right?
That's right. That's one example.
Okay. So, I mean, that could be a possibility then for that to apply in Greenfield. I'm just wondering why we need to separate this out from property taxes when property taxes already pay for like other roadway, other modes of transportation.
Councillor, yeah, the options are provided just as for consideration of what are the different revenue alternatives that are available to council. So to your question about the development charges and the offsite levies, those could apply only for transit capital in the areas where the levies are applied, and the report states that they'd be more viable on the greenfield because of the consistent nature of greenfield development. So the levy revenues would be more predictable because of that development. And the second factor that is that similar with the local improvement, it could have the potential to have unintended effects on infill or redevelopment activities. So should that be considered, the greenfield would be the more viable place for that tool.
Okay. Okay. And then, so you talked about just being applicable to capital. Operational charges. Is there one type of bus over another that has lower operational charges going forward?
I think we're still learning a lot about new technologies, and we'll see more, particularly with the hydrogen bus going into service. We have to consider fuel, maintenance. So, for example, with battery electric buses, the maintenance theoretically should be lower because there's not all the same components that need to be maintained. And similarly with hydrogen. However, there's the fuel component as well that's part of operating hydrogen buses. So I wouldn't say that there's one that we know is a lower cost at this point, but we think zero emission buses will be lower over time.
Okay, good. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you. And I wasn't clear, maybe I missed it in the report. Is one of your assumptions that the bus the capital investments would be purchased, that's a cost out, right? Or are you looking at alternative models of sort of capital renewal?
The assumption in the model for all of the growth buses is that they are purchased.
Okay, all right, thank you. And my second question, I think, goes to what Councillor Salvador and Councillor Wright have been hedging around, or not hedging around. So one of the issues that comes up with the dedicated transit levy is, and respecting, of course, that the bus network redesign sort of allowed for the realignment of transit routes to reflect sort of the highest user groups, is that there's still areas that have more frequent service than areas that don't, correct?
Can you restate that, Councillor? The area, just so I understand.
Even after the bus network redesign, there are still areas of the city that have either more or more frequent transit service than other areas of the city.
Yeah, I think that would be correct based on where certain types of routes are, and there's more frequent service or crosstown service, but it's generally spread throughout the city, depending on major nodes and corridors, really.
Yeah, and I only bring it, I'm not going down the bus network redesign route, don't worry. But I bring it up because the cost of a dedicated tax levy would be borne by the entire tax base. And yet, one of the most frequent arguments that we heard during the bus network redesign was the age-old argument that I'm going to continue to pay the same amount of money and I'm going to see reduced service. And so I look at you, Ms. Feldman, and maybe that's not fair, but I'm sort of wondering how a dedicated levy, is there space in a model like a dedicated levy to talk about, I think what Councillor Salvador is talking about, which is either a funding formula or a utility type model?
I'll talk a bit about the network and then hand it over to Finance to talk about dedicated levy. I think the bus network redesign or the current transit network design is based on a transfer-based model where there's service. We aim to provide service to all neighborhoods in Edmonton that meet the thresholds required to have service, and then there's opportunities to transfer to that frequent service. So it really is a city-wide network supporting the mass transit plan, supporting the city plan, and so we aim to provide access to all Edmontonians. But I'll let Harm answer about the levy piece.
Yeah, I'll give it a go, Councillor Hamilton. So, the way dedicated levy will work, as you know, is we're going to, have dedicated funding for transit services within our operating budget. As administration, we'll kind of decide which areas of the city those funds would be spent in, where the need is, where the service requirement is. But in terms of collection of the funds, they would be across all general property tax owners.
Yeah. Is there a similar but alternative model? For instance, are there jurisdictions that use a utility-based model so that the areas that benefit the most from frequent service or that increased investment pay more into it?
Off the top of my head, not that I'm aware of. I don't know. Definitely something we could look into.
Yes, that would be interesting. I think in part because we have as I understand it, we have an inner ring road. We have the inner ring road core neighborhood service, and then you receive a different level of service. And this isn't a critique. There's some population density like human movement, transportation network stuff that happens outside the, like between the two ring roads. And so some might call those two different sort of user bases that would arguably pay different amounts and use the system differently.
There are other transit systems in Canada that have different charges for service. So kind of like utility structure, but not utility per se. Halifax has a local transit rate and a regional transit rate. So if you're in a certain distance of a bus stop, you're charged a certain price on your tax bill, and it's very apparent on your tax bill that you get charged the local rate. But you also get charged the regional rate when you're in that boundary. If you're outside of that boundary, you only get charged the regional rate.
Is that something that we would look at? Could look at?
And this was discussed a bit in the first report on this topic. It's called the benefit area tax, and was discussed about related to subclassing, which I know has been a topic that committees discussed. So finance might want to comment on that.
Yeah, I'll add a little bit to this. So the benefit area tax is a tool that could be used in this particular way. Council has the authority to subclass residential properties. However, as the report states, this tool was flagged as non-viable for the reason that it has the potential, again, to disincentivize redevelopment and infill in areas that are adjacent to LRT stations, which would run contrary to the objectives of the city plan. But I want to add a little bit more as well on user fees. So your broader question alluded to that fair distribution of transit costs. And user fees have the potential to sort of contribute to that because the riders that are using the service are also paying their fair share of the service. So some of that is distributed through the user fee system.
Got it. Good. Thank you. The two scenarios that you have put forward, keeping service level at 2022 level, then grow with population and the growth scenario, both. Then you have given us a dedicated tax levy required. Does that include capital costs as well, or just the operational costs?
Just the operating cost.
So this would not include money that has been already funded, allocated, for the new transit garage. This would not include purchasing new buses, or would include buses?
So the scenarios, Mayor Sohi, show what the net operating requirement would be.
Okay.
So those are items that are currently unfunded. Okay. Majority of the capital for the LRT lines is funded.
Yeah.
As it shows in the table. What the unfunded capital portion is the purchase of the buses. So that's the capital shortfall that's being reflected in the report.
So what this 0.3% over 10 years for maintaining services 22 level, and under growth scenario 0.7% over 10 years, that's just purely operational.
Correct.
Okay, got it. So I think we need to think about how we align this with the federal permanent transit funding that will start becoming available in 2026, right? I think we would have to estimate what our share of that is going to be based on the current formula, which is ridership, and there's another component. So I think what I'm interested in, I'm open to having a dedicated tax levy, but I think we need to understand how we can use that fund, which is $3 billion, right? And then have a kind of a more capital investment plan coordinated with what the operational requirement would be, right? Can we do some work in that area and then start preparing for how we add more bus service?
So, Mayor, the federal program that you referenced is scheduled to be announced. We'll have further details this fall. Yeah. And so what we have done internally within city administration is we have already set up a process, a team of city staff who will again, look at the program details when they are available, and some of these things that you mentioned, definitely, those are the kind of things we'll be looking at to make sure we're able to maximize the benefit of this fund for our city.
So my understanding of that permanent transit plan, when we were discussing that when I was in that portfolio, were to fund capital, but also make some money available within that fund for rehabilitation of the existing infrastructure, which the current formula allows, right?
Yeah, I think we're waiting to see what, as Yetunde shared, the criteria for that, and we're hoping there's a state of good repair as an important component of that. Certainly, we expect it will be all capital and not operating funding.
Yeah.
We also don't know if it'll all be based on a formula based on ridership and population like previous programs.
There
So
there are unknowns, but I'm trying to get at is that once that money becomes available, we will be able to use that money for capital investments, and that may free up some of the capital requirements that requires tax levy, that may free up there might be some flexibility around figuring out how we fund the operations, right? So that's what I'm to understand. I think, I don't know if I'm making sense.
Definitely, the capital requirements we see in the medium to long term, we will be considering the use of the permanent transit fund for that. And we're continuing to advocate and look into other funding opportunities as well. Looking at the zero emissions transit fund, for example, that's another one we're looking into. So
But I'm getting at maybe we need to give you some direction to come back with a plan. Okay, how that transit fund will work, and how we can utilize for capital, and what the operational tax levy requirement be, and make a decision then about whether we do through existing tax levy that we have, or we have a dedicated tax levy, or through general tax increases.
Right. A comprehensive approach like that does make sense. Okay. And like Yetunde was saying, once we find out more on how we can actually use that permanent transit fund and where we can apply it, that's going to be a big part of it.
Okay. So let me know if that kind of direction is required for that comprehensive plan to be brought forward, maybe next year, right? So I'm out of time, but I do have more questions on the Valley Line reallocation of bus service and the lease on the garage that Councillor Stevenson made a motion on. But I'll come back. Councillor Stevenson.
Yes, thank you very much. Really appreciate the report, some really excellent analysis and lots to dig into. So I wanted to pick up on a question that Councillor Salvador was asking just around our assumptions with mode shift. So I saw two things that I couldn't quite reconcile in the report. So the first was in attachment 3, suggested that base ridership grows in both scenarios at the population growth rate. So that's on page 3 of attachment 3. So it's just suggesting that the base transit ridership per capita remains constant. So we're not anticipating any mode shift in the model.
The service, give me one moment, Councillor.
Sure, yeah. Sorry, it's a specific reference.
I think, yeah, to that point, this was a very simple model. We assumed ridership sort of growed at a steady rate, but certainly that would need to be refined more and also reflected in the revenue. So the revenue also just increases at a steady percentage every year, which doesn't reflect, ridership increases.
But then I was confused because revenue is actually different in scenario 1s and 3. It shows a different revenue expectation for each of those scenarios. So I was unclear if we're assuming that base ridership is based on population growth, and population growth would be the same in both scenarios. I wasn't clear why revenues were increasing more in the scenario 2 versus scenario 1.
Scenario 2 has considerable more bus fleet growth, and thus service hours. So as a result, the assumption about ridership would also grow proportionally.
So then it seems like the model was factoring in a shift, more Edmontonians using, like the service hours we provided would be used.
The revenue in both scenarios is just a 2% inflationary revenue applied year over year. So it's based on the dollar amounts, and it wasn't driven by ridership. So in reality, when we do our fair revenue budget, we would do more detailed modeling where we'd understand that interplay between ridership and revenue. But for the purpose of this report, it was really just a percentage added to the revenue every year.
Okay, but then why is it different in the two?
I think it's due to the higher expenses in one scenario versus another.
It has to do with the scenarios assume they have a constant ridership per service hour, but the gross service scenario provides considerably more service hours because there are 375 growth buses as opposed to 70 growth buses in the new garage.
Okay, no, that's okay. Okay, so it's the constant usership per service hour is kept steady.
That's right.
Okay, okay, and so scenario 2 is growing because there's more service hours, but again, we're not assuming any shift in mode usage.
That's right. It was a conservative assumption around the consumption preferences of transit.
Yeah, well, I think that's a really important one because, you know, we have goals and objectives around our mode shift, and I think that this report actually really highlights, you know, the fiscal impact of that as well, right? Have we done sort of a sensitivity analysis if we tweak that? Like, what does it mean if we increase ridership to 30% mode shift, 40% mode shift, 50% mode shift?
Yeah, we haven't done that analysis yet. I think we know, similar to price points, we know there's elasticities of demand. So when we improve service, there's an impact on ridership, but we haven't done that specifically yet for this analysis.
Okay, well, I think, you know, for me, that would be a really important number because I appreciate that a conservative report has come forward, and I think that it is a big ask overall, and if I want to understand the other side of the equation, I guess. If we are investing in our transit service and we do anticipate a shift in mode, you know, what does that mean for this financial requirement? I think that was only one question for my first round, but I'll come back with a few more. Really appreciate that clarity, though. Thank you.
Just wanted to highlight one thing, Councillor. These are all great questions on the financial assumptions, but I do want to highlight that these just are assumptions, and our purpose to show these was to kind of show what the magnitude of dollars we might need or to explain the revenue tools. So when we actually do a more detailed transit model, I think these are some of the things we'll factor into that, and the numbers will be a bit more precise, but just wanted to highlight that.
No, I appreciate that, and I think it's just that magnitude question. I don't have a sense of the magnitude of the impact that a mode shift would have if we did start to see higher usership, but a great start. Thank you.
Councillor Paquette.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. First question right out of the gate, I'm a little confused about the assertion that we've never contemplated a funding formula. Can you clarify that?
Yeah, Councillor Paquette. And I may have missed something there, but since I've been here, I don't think I've ever been involved in the contemplation of or the work done around a funding formula specifically for transit services.
Okay, so interesting. I made a motion in April, on April 19th, actually, 2021, specifically about that. And then we got a report in 2022 that reported on what a funding formula contemplation would look like. So just FYI, that's actually been in the works already. And I'm actually surprised that we haven't seen it in this report, that information. Is there a reason why that was excluded from the report?
Councillor Paquette, it's Stacey here. Can you maybe just let us follow up on that?
Okay, well, I've got the links for you if you want me to send them to you.
I would happily take that information.
Okay, sounds great. Okay, moving on. Who benefits from transit?
I think the city as a whole benefits from transit. We know there are many transit riders who are women, youth, seniors, newcomers to our city, but really it benefits, you know, all Edmontonians by reducing number of cars on the road, helping with our overall goals of the city plan. So there are direct benefits to transit riders, and there are benefits, I think, to all Edmontonians and businesses.
Okay, all right. And that's why we have the service. But, you know, one of the things that I do wonder is, do we consider transit to be an amenity, or do we consider it to be you know, almost like an essential service if it has that kind of benefit?
I think we've started to think of it more as an essential service. Certainly during the pandemic, we heard a lot of language to that effect from the federal government, other orders of government. It isn't, you know, really used in that as that criteria in the same way that we think of fire, police, and other services, but it is really essential, I think, to keeping the city moving.
Yeah, I'd be interested in seeing that criteria, because I just contemplate, what if we just had zero transit in the city starting tomorrow? What would happen to the city?
It's a great question, Councillor. I think it would be a tough day for the city if transit went stopped. So certainly there's a lot of impacts.
How would that impact our economy and health of our residents?
I'm looking to find. Do you want me to keep going, finance folks?
I mean, difficult question. I mean, there definitely be an economic impact. You're not moving people around to where they need to go. So.
Okay, I'll just interrupt you there. We actually have a really, really huge report that came in just a couple of years ago on the value of transit, and it has those numbers in there. So I can send that to you as well if you like. Sure. So I guess the point of my question is, as you said, with essential services like police and firefighters and libraries and parks and roads, we don't have a 50% recovery model, but we do for transit, and that gets involved in all of our conversations, and maybe that's fair. But do all cities around the world have this 50% model? I know that in North America, it's generally, that's the goal. But I would also say that generally in North America, people don't rave about their great transit service. So I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, so our transit fare policy has a cost recovery target of 40 to 45%, but that's absolutely not required. It was something that was added when we updated the fare policy, and it was approved in 2017, and in response to a recommendation from the city auditor that our fare policy have that target, but it's certainly not necessarily uniform for all transit agencies that they have that target, and it's fully up to the will of council if we set that as a goal.
Yeah, so we just have to think about that, because when we're talking about a dedicated tax levy, you know, but we don't even include the concept of a funding formula, that gets a little bit concerning to me, because there is a way to pair those quite obviously. I'm out of time. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Paquette. I think you knew all the answers to the questions that you were raising, right? So, but points well made. Thank you. Councillor Tang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I appreciate some of the additional information Councillor Paquette shared. And I am now a bit concerned that this report may not have taken kind of some of the past work that has been done into consideration. And I'm also conscious, you know, this week and later in the fall, we're hosting the Canadian Urban Transit Association. And I'm wondering, you know, how collectively, you know, how much of this conversation is on the you know, on the agenda for some of those convenings. I don't know if anyone from ETS or InterGov can shed some light on, because I know you mentioned AB Munis and FCM, but I'm wondering about some of these other associations.
Councillor Tang, it's Carrie. I can respond about CUDA. So the program has been published, and you know, when we talk about funding tools for transit, it's definitely an industry-wide issue, and I think we're all kind of struggling with the same challenges, maybe to, you know, varying degrees. But there isn't a dedicated roundtable to this topic, so it would just be based on the different properties presenting their perspectives on the issue and exploring it with the participants.
Yeah, I guess I'm just curious, there have been past reports that may not have necessarily made it into this one, and then there's also existing conversation that's very active, like as we speak, that I guess for me, kind of knowing those pieces, I almost feel like I will like I actually don't like it when I say this, but I almost want more information. Anyways, that aside, and maybe just on that thread of the intergov piece to Yetunde then, can you just remind me if there's any past or current or upcoming resolutions that's going to be discussed at the convention next week for Alberta municipalities that's related specifically to capital grant to support public transit? Any active ones or soon to be debated?
Absolutely. So one of the active ones actually from 2023, but soon expiring after 3 years, is the long-term transit resolution that the City of Edmonton advanced in 2020. And that is still active, but again, almost expired. And I know that generally speaking, so not just in terms of transit specifically, but about like LGFF, which is the local government fiscal framework and things like that, revenue sharing, all of that. Yeah. That's a priority for AB Munis. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, and I think there is a couple ones actually for smaller municipalities.
Yes.
When it comes to public transit, right?
Yes. Smaller municipalities. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there's something there that we can kind of leverage. This is just not a big city issue. Everyone is kind of struggling to adequately fund their public transportation. And then just on the city charter, just so I'm clear, like, is there appetite with the province to reopen that big city charter conversation? I didn't think there was.
I haven't heard anything lately in terms of an appetite to revisit that. But again, talking within the general context of, because we had the fiscal framework in the past, which then evolved into what we know now as, or was replaced by the local government fiscal framework, which is still, the allocation for the smaller, the non-charter cities is being negotiated. So, but again, I think it depends on where council wants to go, and maybe jointly with the city of Calgary, because those are the two charter cities in Alberta, if that's something that we want to pursue or revisit or explore at least.
Right, and so that I think is a much bigger conversation, and that was one of your bullets you had on the slide. I guess I'm kind of struggling with a couple things here. And I think report identifies that there is an existing strain on property taxes, yet is also proposing a dedicated property tax increase. And I feel like the issue is so urgent that we actually can't delay this decision to, say, next budget cycle. Is that right?
So, Councillor Tang, I think what we're seeing in the report is that council has the ability to generate property taxes and levy property taxes. It's not saying that there's room for property tax increases. I think tax tolerance has to be considered as a part of it. So it's one of the tools that council has that they're able to implement.
Oh shoot, I'm out of time. I'll come back. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Tang. Councillor Rice.
Thank you, Mayor Sophie, and really interesting conversation. I appreciate the presentation because this conversation is not only about the revenue, it's about the financial model and also about the operating model for our transits. So I have a few questions here. First question, and for the dedicated transit funding, do you have a specific data what funding percentage in all property tax levy and we used for the transit? So only first piece, dedicated transit funding. What's the portion percentage?
Councillor Rice, are you asking what portion of our operating budget is dedicated towards transit?
Yeah, yes. So in our property tax levy, entire property tax levy.
Let me look into the number and get back to you on that.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much. The first one I would like to ask, because we're talking about the opportunity and for the revenue. And what's the current shortfall on operating and capital and full transit for our ETS?
Councillor, I think that's what this report is trying to illustrate. There is no, it really depends on how fast we want to grow service and what our target is for what we want service to look like. So this report presents two scenarios with two different, I guess,
I'm
gaps.
asking, sorry, I have to mind for my time. I'm asking specific shortfall. Can you provide me that specific shortfall? Where is that?
The shortfall depends on which scenario you move forward with.
For the operating and then capital. And I'm asking current, I'm not asking future for moving forward. So what is the current set?
Yeah.
The current shortfall.
Yep, Councillor Rice. So just going back to your first question of just to be clear, for 2023, of a $3.3 billion expenditure budget, Edmonton Transit Services is approximately 13% of those expenditures. And then I'll get back to you when you say shortfall, I'm assuming you're talking about what's the current net operating requirement for Edmonton Transit Services. So I'll get that number for you as soon as I can.
In terms of operating and the capital both. So I would like to have that information. Thank you very much. And for the third question, and because we heard, I believe not only myself heard, my colleagues heard, and in some area, and is under services, and in some area across city, and is over services. So what specific adjustment strategy our city used? And because every year I know we have the 5 times adjustment, and what specific measures, strategies you use to adjust this? Because I try to figure out, is about the shortfall for the funding, or is about the operating model to cost some area under services, some area over services? Because we heard complain all the time, and people see the empty buses all the time, but in some area, and even they didn't get the frequent buses. So I just want some information on that.
Councillor Rice, it's Carrie. I can respond to that. We have our service standards that govern where service is. And we know with the reports we presented on August 29th that we have neighborhoods in need of service. We haven't maintained our service hours per capita. We also know we have neighborhoods that currently have on demand that are ready for conventional service. And that includes neighborhoods outside of the Henday. So with the additional capacity that we can gain, we can address those gaps that we have in the network. In terms of seeing empty buses, we look at our productivity standards in terms of bus loads throughout the service day. So yes, at times you might find a bus doesn't have a bus load of passengers. At other times they're very, very full. But it's all about our service standards that govern when service is changed. And as you said, we do that 5 times a year.
But what I heard the only point is about we need additional capacity to address that shortfall. But to me, and even I don't get the data, what is shortfall right now looks like? And
so the August 29th report gave that. So it's 260,000 service hours per year is the shortfall. So if it's helpful, we can send you those reports that we presented on August 29th. That talked about the service gaps and the service performance relative to those standards.
My point is not, I know we're talking about the funding today. My point is about not only a funding, it's about the operating model and how we operate to keep that balance and between under services and over services. And instead of only look at the fact about the capacity of the funding.
Thank you,
so my time is out.
Thank you, Councillor. Harm, you have a quick answer to Councillor Rice's question?
Yeah, I just wanted the net operating requirement for 2023 for Edmonton Transit Services is around $285 million.
$285 million. Okay, got it. Okay. Can I go first? Because I have to leave about in 7 minutes. Okay, good. Thank you. I thank you for giving us the information on what those scenarios and but is my understanding correct that you're assuming that we will fund the Valley Line reallocation resources and that we will fund the leasing of the garage that Councillor Stevenson made a motion about, right?
So both scenarios 1 and 2 include the Valley Line precursor hours being redeployed, so that's constant between both scenarios.
Yeah.
The satellite facility, it does assume in both that it's leased, and it's a matter of how quickly we add buses to that facility.
So the decision that we haven't made yet, right? So we would have to make those decisions first, then think about, then the numbers you presented are beyond those two investments, right?
The numbers vary. For the satellite garage, it can fit 40 buses, and so we've changed. In one scenario, we add them all in year 1, and the other one, we spread it out over several years.
Okay.
We also, with the future growth garage, big garage, the scenarios are different in terms of how fast we add buses. Do we start with 75 in the first year, or do we start with a smaller number?
Okay, let me ask it differently then. The tax levy required, or dedicated tax levy required of 0.3% to keep services at 2022 level, right? Does that 0.3% include funding of the Valley Line reallocation hours, right? Of what I think we did about $8 million. Is that included in that 0.3%, or that is we assuming that is already funded? Then we need additional 0.3% to keep.
It's included in the hours, which drive the dollars in the budget. So I would say it's included in that scenario.
Oh, I see. Okay, so if we make that decision during SOBA, then that amount will, the 0.3% will go down into the future. No?
That's correct.
Okay, got it. Okay.
And so again, just very rough estimates.
Oh yeah,
so like
I'm just all I'm trying to understand is that there's a sequence of decisions, right? So we have two decisions coming in front of us, right? One is the Valley Line reallocation, and the other one is unfunded service package, right? And okay, got it. That's all I needed to wanted to understand, right? So because if we don't make a decision on those, then probably will be pretty tough to move on other decisions again, and as I said, which require more dedicated resources. I just got to go back to questions here. Actually, I'll stop here. That's the only clarification I needed at this time, and so, Council Salvador, can you resume the rest of the meeting?
Yes,
I'll be back
I can.
at 1:30.
Sounds good. Excellent. Well, just looking at who is on the board, I guess I would be up next. Oh, did you get? Was Councillor Wright on the list? She seems to have been dropped.
Yeah, she was.
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Wright.
Thank you. Just in reference to what Councillor Rice was talking about the empty buses and that, is there any allowance? I notice in some of the scenarios we're talking about the 40-foot buses. So could we look at smaller buses as well? Would that reduce costs in both capital and operational?
Yes, Councillor, I think as Ms. Houghton-McDonald explained, with the transit service standards, we look really rigorously at all the performance of the routes and how we're doing in terms of capacity in the service and where we have spare capacity, and do our best to reallocate while maintaining the standards. Certainly, if a route falls in a certain threshold, we can look at community service, the 30-foot buses, although they're a much smaller portion of our fleet right now. But generally, I would say we don't have a lot of unproductive service in the city. We look really closely at that productivity measure for boardings per hour on a bus, so full buses, to try to be as efficient as we can with what we have.
Okay, so the bus that runs that route might have more people in a peak hour, but you're not going to switch it out 2 hours later to a smaller one.
Yeah, we have to also do what's most efficient for scheduling it, with our fleet.
Okay, and then, so now that you said scheduling, when we're talking on demand for service hours, does that include like time to and from pickup, or is?
Yeah, there are two different ways we measure service hours. One is just our overall hours, called when a bus leaves the garage, as well as when it goes to its first point, but before it starts picking up passengers. And then there's revenue hours. That's where we have passengers on board who are paying their fare. So in this, we've used revenue hours, but we also have full hours, and we try to be as efficient as possible with that piece. The piece where we don't have riders.
So if one of the contractors for on-demand is scheduled, let's say from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m., that's 4 hours of service hours, or is it just the time that they are picking up passengers?
For on-demand specifically, I would say the full 4 hours is service hours, but we'd call revenue hours when they start picking up passengers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then what else did I have? Oh, I'm wondering if you can provide, so you provided 13% goes to ETS. That was operational funding, right?
Correct.
Okay. What percentage are going to special road projects? But I think that would be more capital.
Percentage of the operating budget going towards special road projects?
Yeah.
Can you just give me maybe an example?
Yellowhead or Twilliger?
The capital funding for those?
Yeah. What percentage of the capital budget are for those?
I'd have to get back to you
on
those numbers.
Okay. I'm just wondering, because if we're looking at it sort of a dedicated tax, I just don't know why we want to dedicate it. I mean, I think all of our property taxes are paid to cover all costs of the city. But, so I just wanted to know something in relation to that. And one comment that was made about fare distribution. I didn't know if it was fare, F-A-R-E, or F-A-I-R. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor. Good point.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. I will take a round, and I'll actually just take this opportunity to put a motion on the floor. So I'll move that administration return with options for a multi-year transit plan to fund future transit service growth, including but not limited to the future transit growth outlined in the September 20th, 2023 Financial and Corporate Services Report, FCS 01246, with options to include capital lifecycle costs and preliminary analysis of alignment with the Permanent Public Transit Fund. And Q2 2024 is when that would be due. And I'll just briefly take a moment to introduce that. So I think really good report, quite comprehensive, and for me really landed on the fact that if we do want to achieve our ambitious goals for mode shift towards that 50% public and active, we need to be seriously considering having more permanent, stable, and consistent funding for public transit, which is absolutely a core service. I will leave it at that and have some closing remarks as well. But I think this starts a conversation as to what exactly that could look like. I appreciate the scenarios that were outlined in the report. I also think that those can be further refined, and additional details and options could be put on the table. So I would look forward to any questions or any additions or changes that folks would like to see around the table. Thanks so much. And I'll now go to Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you so much. This has been such a helpful conversation and learning a lot. So, to the Mayor's question that the models assume some of those investments are made in terms of the satellite facility and the precursor service, I still was confused in the second scenario that we're not seeing any increase in service hours per capita until 2028, until after 2028, so starting in 2029. So is that, can you talk me through that again? Is that just, I was confused by that, just recognizing that the model assumes the LRT is opening, that we would have those precursor services. I'm not sure what was behind that.
Councillor, and this is scenario 2 you're referring to?
Scenario 2, yeah. So I'm looking at page 6 of attachment 1.
Yeah, so I think while those investments are really important, we've also had the service level, population continues to grow, as I think you heard from us on August 29th. And in order to keep the per capita, the hours need to increase proportionally. So until we have a larger growth garage, those investments, the satellite facility and the precursor service being redeployed, they're absolutely important, but they don't necessarily have that large impact of increasing the hours per capita. They help us maintain and grow a bit from where we are today, but not significantly.
Okay, no, that's really helpful. Just in terms of the capital costs, sorry, I feel like, again, you've done a great job and the model is such a great starting point. Just wondering if we were looking at our capacity to do this within our debt financing limits?
So there'd be, I know I keep saying this, there'd be a lot to consider there in terms of if there's like a matching component with other federal levels with other grants and things like that. So there's some ability there. But if it's fully 100% tax supported, I think we do run up against some limitations.
Okay, no, that's helpful. That's really great. I was also interested in the developer charges. So I know the report seemed to suggest, if I was understanding correctly, that it was primarily appropriate in greenfield scenarios. I know that a lot of infill development faces developer charges in terms of upgrading the alleyway, for example. So I was wondering if there was at least possibility as we move forward for us to consider those developer charges, and again, maybe instead of us prioritizing alleyway repaving, which can be funded through other processes that we have at the city, other capital programs that we have, then maybe we would shift some of that towards transit investment, upgrading the nearest transit stop, things like that. That might be something to follow up with, I guess, in terms of permitting maybe, but.
Yeah, that's something we'd have to definitely look into.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, but again, I see an opportunity there. I think, being really intentional with our developer charges in both greenfield and infill, in terms of upgrading sidewalks, upgrading walkways to access transit could be an approach that we take. My last question, and it's just for my own learning and understanding, how small of a geographic area, are there any limitations on the size of a geographic area for a local improvement levy? Could a local improvement levy ever be citywide, for example?
Councillor, conceptually, I believe they can, though at that level, it serves the same function as a general property tax increase.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. That's a very good point. And as you say, again, there's always the risk of appealing that from landowners. Okay, well, thank you so much. I think that answered a lot of my questions. I really appreciate the motion that has been put forward and look forward to further conversation. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Stevenson. Councillor Tang, go ahead.
Great, thank you very much, and thank you for putting this motion on the table. I think it just indicates, at some point we have to do something about this issue. Just have some final questions to finish things up. I may have missed this, but can you let me know where we're at in terms of measuring the current percentage of mode shift? I know there's a city plan report coming later.
I believe the mode share for transit is 9%, but I need to double check as of the last household travel survey in 2015. So one of our challenges is also we don't have a tool to measure that on an annual basis right now.
Oh, 9% in 2015.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, that definitely is very outdated. Okay, anyways, that's a separate conversation. And then I guess I'll just share kind of the other piece I was struggling with a little bit, because on the earlier comments with a utility-based model, and I think there's a comment made about user fee somewhat captures the notion of putting that onus on those who will use the service more. But if I think about, who actually use the service more as their primary mode of transportation, it's predominantly lower income people, youth, seniors on fixed income, newcomers, many of them don't have cars. And I think I would just really caution against that, and I will see that as a disadvantage to some of those considerations you had mentioned. Any thoughts on that? I know we talk about equity a lot when it comes to transit.
Yes, Councillor, I think it's absolutely true. Increasing fares has a disproportional impact on people who are from those groups, and also it impacts achieving ridership goals, achieving mode shift goals, and ultimately increasing fares too much also impacts the ability to generate revenue from fares. So you need to be really careful when considering fare price increases.
Right, and I think kind of this broader conversation of like who should pay proportionally, right? And then I think just
Councillor.
Yeah.
Oh, if I may just add, we do have the opportunity, of course, to have subsidized programs for certain user groups as well to reduce the cost for those users.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I recognize that, but I think it's more the narrative that I'm quite concerned about. And I think the other piece, I just wanted some clarification because on the developer charge, I mean, we just recently had a discussion about developer-led transit in developing in greenfield neighborhoods. And administration didn't actually recommend that moving forward because there's some unintended consequence, again, on equity. So can you just clarify for me what's the difference between that and what is being suggested here? Or it would, I think in this case, it will be mandatory. Is that right?
Councillor, speaking about developer-funded transit?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we discussed that as well in the August 29th reports at committee. Developer-funded transit is definitely, something that could be considered. However, there were.
I'm sorry. I'm asking what's the difference between what you suggested here in this report.
So we didn't talk about funding from another source like developers in this report.
But you talk about developer charges.
Oh, development charges, and I think the folks from finance can speak to this, but they are charged to land developers as part of fees that they pay when developing an area of land, and not direct funding. The way developer-funded transit worked was a direct a contract with the city to fund transit service, so separate from a development charge.
All right. Okay.
I don't know if I got that.
Oh, did you want to jump in? Nope. Okay. You know what? I'll leave it there. Yeah, I think this warrants a broader financial discussion. I'm also struggling with the fact that it doesn't necessarily include some of the past reports. But at some point something has to give when it comes to transit. So thank you very much for all the responses.
Thank you, Councillor Tang. Councillor Paquette.
Oh, thank you, Chair Salvador. So in your motion, are you contemplating also the potential, just so you can take a look at it, at what a funding formula would look like in a meaningful way that takes into account different potential areas of funding and some of that variability?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Paquette. I would say, like, the way that it is worded currently, and the intention behind it was not necessarily to go down the route of a funding formula. I guess it is a broad motion, though. I would say I would use my time to ask administration whether or not that was included in the broad scope of this. I would say my read on it is it would not be.
Okay, I'll just clarify though. When we talk about a permanent public transit fund, we're already like 3/4 of the way there. So that's why I was asking.
Yeah, no, fair point. And thank you for that. Do you have any other questions before I ask administration the question you just asked me?
Yeah, because I've got a number. So if you want to hold on to that, keep it in your back pocket. Okay, so does it also, were you thinking that we would also get maybe because I know the work has already been done, it would just be a case of updating comparative jurisdictions, just so we can see, okay, what are other cities doing? So we're not making a decision in a vacuum.
So you'd be looking for incorporation of a jurisdictional scan into the motion, Councillor Paquette?
Just wondering if that was your contemplation. As Councillor Tang pointed out, there is an enormous body of work that should be informing us on decisions of this fiscal magnitude that maybe would be helpful in rational and informed decision making.
Sure. Yeah, I think given the extensive body of work that's been done in other jurisdictions and by organizations like CUDA, that could absolutely help inform this conversation. I can confirm with administration that background and context would help frame this discussion and this motion. Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I'll just turn to administration now. I think there was already questions about elasticity of fares. So we understand that you raise fares and you potentially lose ridership, meaning that you actually end up losing money. So my question to administration is, can we, for the public, can we point to material and observable improvement to service and safety for the general public that would justify a fare increase? Like they're going to look at transit and be like, yeah, you know what? That makes sense. I should pay more for this better service.
Councillor, I think that's one thing we've talked about with council in the past, or previous councils, about tying fare increases to when we have some implementation of an important piece of improvement, so we can show the additional service. I think we do have a few of those pieces that we've had in the last few years, including the addition of on-demand service. We have growth of LRT service and the ARC fare payment system, but certainly I think that value proposition needs to be there for riders.
Right, but the LRT service is already being duplicated by a bus service, so it'd just be a transfer of service, wouldn't it?
I think certainly there's a portion of new riders, but there's a lot of riders who transfer from existing service, but the quality and the experience of the Valley Line, for example, would be a different rider experience. So I think there's some additional value there.
Personally, I mean, would it make sense that we ask people, do you feel that transit has improved before we tell them that they should think that it's improved?
Councillor Paquette, it's Carrie. I just want to add, when we submitted our budget documents last fall, for the revenue budget, the fare scenario, the fare increase scenario was in there. And I think ultimately we follow council's direction. So if it's the will of council, to do something additional around the faring scenarios, we're happy to take that direction
it just
from all of
makes
you.
sense to the public,
Yeah.
right? So
totally hear you.
Really quick question then. Do we have a report that we can share with the public? Because I get a lot of questions about fare gates and their utility, and we've heard that maybe it wouldn't be a good fit for Edmonton, but can we provide the public with proof of that analysis?
Yes, so we actually, we can follow up on that and share information with all of council. Again, the City of Calgary commissioned a study. It was conducted by a third party that has all of that background, and we can share that with you for sure.
With sort of an analysis of why that also applies to Edmonton?
Yes, absolutely. We have very similar systems between Calgary and Edmonton. Both have open payment systems. Yep.
Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Paquette. Councillor Rice, go ahead.
Thank you. So I have a few questions regarding the on-demanding bus services. And so I would like to know the percentage of on-demanding services we provide right now in terms of operating costs and also capital expenditures, and is the entire dedicated transit funding. And
Councillor, on the capital costs, that's an easy question. We don't have any capital costs associated with on-demand transit. In terms of the proportion of our operating budget that's towards on-demand, we need to take that away and calculate it. If you'd like, we could follow up with your office and share that.
Okay, that'll be great. And because I heard many my constituents reach out to me to have to address the concern about the on-demand service in terms of technology right now we use to attract riders. And because rider has now, there are two situations. One, and for the students, if they are living in the neighborhoods, they have to use the on-demand services, and they don't have proper tool to book the transit every day. So that means for the 4 months, 6 months in the school, they have to do this every day. That is one thing. Another thing is about the waiting time. And then what I heard is the waiting time is like 90 minutes, sometimes could up to the 2 hours. And by this way, we lost the riders. And because instead of the waiting like 90 minutes to 2 hours, they just drive their own bus, their own car. And then this is actually not achieve the outcome for us to provide that on-demand services in the developing communities. So is there any way, and from our revenue perspective, and how we can track them, and is there any improvement, adjustment for the on-demanding services?
Councillor, so go ahead.
Sorry,
Ms.
Sarah.
Yeah, you go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so Councillor, as we've talked before, I am speaking with our partner to look at options to support school service. So they're doing some analysis for me as those conversations are ongoing. In terms of adding the extra fleet for the 25% increase in on-demand hours, our provider is in the process of doing that. Not all of the vehicles have arrived, but they are being added, which will help with some of the wait times. Overall, we're seeing very, very high demand for the services. That's why the wait times are taking a bit longer. But as these vehicles get added, we'll see the wait times reduce as well. And lastly, to book trips, we have telephones in the transit centers for people who don't have a cell phone on them as well. So just wanted to highlight that.
Because our revenue tools and for the non-tax based, the first one is user face. And if people feel like that is not convenient for them to use on-demand services, and no matter how much investment we put on, and we lost riders, we lost revenues. So that contribution and then is already impacted. So that is why I ask these questions. I really want to make sure any tools we listed on the revenue list, we can have this specific approach in place or technical supports in place to support, we really get that revenue and for that specific item. So that's a question. I have another question. I think Councillor Paquette already asked about the fare gets. I asked last year, and in terms of, and what's the answer I get is about this is really expensive from capital piece. And do we have a specific the dollar amount and or analysis is done for the entire city, and what's the capital cost could be, and for the fare gets there?
Yes, we did a preliminary assessment. So looking at about 1/10 of our stations, it was just under $30 million. It wasn't a detailed planning and design exercise. It's underestimating. We have a list of factors that would need to be considered looking at it. And we can provide that in a follow-up memo to council so that you're aware of the background. And we'll also link the Calgary study as well.
Okay, thank you. That's my question.
Councillor Rice, I just wanted to respond to one of your questions on on-demand service. I think the operating budget for that is annually around $11 to $12 million.
Okay, so the total operating budget for the ETS is how much?
The total operating budget for ETS was, I quoted it before, just give me a second here. Yeah, the net operating requirement for ETS is around $287 million.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rice. I don't see anyone else on the board there, so I'll just take a moment to clarify some of the questions that were raised by Councillor Paquette. So just to administration, given the way that this motion is worded currently, is there contemplation of, would contemplation of a funding formula be included, or is that, would that be a whole another body of work? But it does sound like we've done some of that work already, so not quite sure where that puts us.
Okay, so I think I would say it this way. I don't think we'd explicitly go to a funding formula model. And if I can just sort of address what I think the challenge is, including like this report that we're back here today with is a result of a subsequent motion to a report that previously asked us to look at that. One of the first things that we have to do is determine, before we can put a formula in place, determine what the model for funding transit is and how many of these other tools that we should use. If we decide that the model is a combination of tax levy and user fees and no other tools, at that point is when we could look, I think, at developing a formula. But there's a sequence of events that has to happen before we can look at funding formula.
Gotcha. Okay, so it's almost like we are having a conversation about what variables would even be put in a potential formula at this point.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay. So this would allow us to take a deeper dive, look at what those look at one of the important variables that likely should be part of any potential conversation relating to a funding formula. And if there is a subsequent desire to do that, that would be after this body of work comes back. Correct? Yes. Okay. Gotcha. And then can we expect to see any reference to what is happening in other municipalities, jurisdictional scan, just as some background that would come back with this report?
We did include some in the first report in this series, and I think narrowing down now, looking at the tools that would be in the next report, we could update that scan.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, that answers my questions. Councillor Paquette's questions through my questions. So if there's anyone else on the board, feel free to pop on. If not, I will just briefly close. Anyone to speak to? No?
Oh, I didn't ring it in time. I would love to speak to
Oh,
this
yeah,
motion.
please go ahead, Councillor Paquette.
Okay, it's a great motion. So thank you for putting it on the board. I really, really appreciate it. And I do appreciate the work that administration puts in. I understand that it's complicated. I understand there's a lot of moving pieces and a lot of deep dives that we've done. And so it can be hard to keep track of all of it. However, as I mentioned, this is, aside from police funding, for which we do have a formula, this is the second largest operational expense we have. And we're also talking about capital expenses and really ramping that up in order to serve Edmontonians. So it just makes sense that we should be able to have a very comprehensive body of work and be extremely knowledgeable about what is being recommended, what is being analyzed, and for council, how we're making our decision and what we're making our decision based on. Very, very important stuff. So one of the things that is a little bit frustrating is that we've been talking about this for a number of years. In 2018, it is, I believe, I made a motion that yielded our value of transit report. And a lot of these questions were asked even then. And here we are. And by the way, I wasn't the originator. Time didn't start when Paquette got on the scene. There were lots of other motions and work before that. And here we are today, still talking about a lot of the exact same things. So one of the things that occurred to me, and I may have said this before, is that council often makes decisions for the here and now, yes, but some of the bigger decisions for which we take heat are not even beneficial to us politically or to the population right now. It's for the benefit of those who come after, 8 years from now, 6 years from now, 10 years from now. And we have to be willing to stand up and take that heat. We have to be willing to say to Edmontonians, yeah, I know you feel like your service is degrading. And it is, frankly, because we keep cutting service, because we keep looking for savings, because we hear over and over again, like, you got to keep in mind tax tolerance, which makes sense. But what also makes sense is, do we keep in mind the public's expectation for service for their taxes? If I go around in my neighborhood, and I have, and I ask people, listen, if it meant like 20 or 30 more bucks a year on your taxes, but what you got was much better services, would that be better for you? Or would you prefer taxes to increase just marginally or stay the same, yet your services decline year after year? I'll leave it to you to guess what the answer is, because it's probably your answer as well. Transit is so essential to the running of this city for so many various reasons, equity reasons, but also economic reasons. For every dollar we put into transit, we get $3 return on investment. So when I asked what would happen if we got rid of transit, well, what do we invest in transit? We would lose about $1 billion in economic activity overnight. That's how important this service is. That, to me, to my mind, makes it essential for the people of Edmonton, aside from the equity reasons that we have it. So I'm in favor of this motion. I want to see the information. I'm also massively in favor of increasing transit because that's what the people are saying loud and clear because it benefits everyone. Oddly enough, we don't always have these conversations about road improvements, road construction, road expansions, but we do for transit. It just, there's a little bit of a logic disconnect in the way we talk about this. And I still, to this day, for my life, can't figure out why. Except for the fact that we really do have a very strongly embedded car culture. And as we know, it's great for people. They got the freedom to do that. But we also need to have robust alternatives that are attractive. We're not going to get there by nickel and diming. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Councillor Paquette, for those words. And I will be brief because I think that was really well put. And I'll just say that I often reflect on the fact that we have chronically underfunded transit for decades at this point. And while we do have ambitious goals and targets in place, we will not be able to get there unless we actively invest in enhancing service. It is well known that safe, reliable, and convenient transit is what will support mode shift. And I do share the frustration expressed by Councillor Paquette that this conversation has been had for many years across numerous councils. And that ultimately, I mean, we can talk a big game when it comes to public transit, but if we aren't adequately funding it, we will not meet the expectations of Edmontonians, let alone the goals outlined in the city plan. And again, public transit is a core essential service, and it deserves to be funded as such. I would also say that as a city, I think we've been clear that we want to build an Edmonton that is inclusive, affordable, and climate resilient. We want Edmonton to be a place where people can get around in a variety of ways that work for their time and their budget. I'm also constantly reminded that land use and transportation are two of the biggest contributors to climate change. And this is a direct way within our tool belt that we can address that. And by offering more affordable transportation options and encouraging mode shift and enhancing our service, we will reduce emissions. So yeah, with that, I would encourage colleagues to support this, and I really look forward to having a robust and comprehensive conversation when this comes back. Thanks so much. And please vote.
We have all the votes.
Please display the votes. Thank you so much. That is carried. All right. So, moving on. Actually, I'm just going to take a peek at the time. So we have, whoops, sorry folks, about 10 minutes before our lunch break. So we're on to 7.3, Metro Line to Blatchford operating options. And I selected that one. And I should be fairly quick and brief with my questions, so maybe we'll get through it before lunch. I don't know if other folks have questions as well, but we'll wait for the delegation to come on up to the front. And maybe just to administration, do you have a lengthy presentation, or is it brief remarks?
It's a very short presentation.
Okay, go ahead.
A couple slides.
Great.
Let's just get situated.
So good morning. I'm Eddie Robert, the Deputy City Manager of City Operations. With me today, I have Sarah Feldman, Director of Business Integration and Workforce Development with the ETS, Tom Lumsden, the Director of Blatchford, and we have Trevor Dennehy, our Director of LRT, Operations and Maintenance. So during the 23 to 26 budget deliberations, administration presented a funded service package to fully operate the Metro Line to Blatchford extension starting in 2024. At that time, Council decided not to fund the operation of the extension and defer this decision to a later date. Administration indicated that the time that we would return to council with the information prior to the fall 2023 supplemental operating budget adjustment. So today we will be presenting the report on the Metro Line to Blatchford operating options in advance of the fall 2023 supplemental operating budget. And I will pass it over to Sarah to continue the presentation.
Great. The Metro Line Northwest LRT corridor was approved by Council as part of the long-term LRT network plan in 2009. Phase 1 of the Metro Line Northwest LRT is a 1.6 kilometer extension from Nate to Blatchford. It consists of 2 new stations, the permanent Nate station, which will replace the temporary Nate station, which went into operation in 2015, and the new Blatchford Gate station, located further in the Blatchford development area. This segment of the Metro Line Northwest LRT will support transit access for residents and businesses in the Blatchford area and surrounding neighborhoods and advance city plan goals around mode shift and energy transition. Construction on the Metro Line to Blatchford extension started in 2020 and will be completed by the end of 2023. Once construction work is completed, testing and commissioning of the extension will commence, and the new extension could go into service as early as Q1 2024. The criteria for when and how to introduce transit service are set out in City Policy C539A, Transit Service Policy, and the Transit Service Standards Administrative Procedure. The Transit Service Standards provide criteria for when there is sufficient development in an area to warrant consideration for the introduction of transit service. These criteria include thresholds around the number of residents and the employees within the area. This influences whether there's sufficient activity and ridership to support transit service. I'll now pass it over to Tom to discuss the Blatchford development.
The development of the Blatchford community started on the west side of the land, as you can see from the slide. To date, 5 stages of development have been serviced, with the 6th planned for 2024. Nate has purchased 32 acres of land on the east side of the community adjacent to their existing campus. The Nate lands are currently being serviced and should be completed construction this year, making a solid path from the west side to the east side of the community. The Nate servicing provides a connection to the Metro Line LRT extension, which will allow current Blatchford residents to directly access the LRT stations. The planned servicing of the Blatchford land is to continue on the west side of the community, start in the market area near the Blatchford Market Station in 2025, and work our way north towards the Blatchford Gate Station by 2029-30. The overall community servicing is planned to be completed between 2038 and 2042. I'll now pass it back to Sarah for the rest of the presentation.
So I'll just go over briefly the 2 scenarios we presented in the report. We developed 2 scenarios for operations once the project is complete. In the first scenario, both the new permanent Nate station and the Blatchford Gate station would open, and service commencement would be in Q1 of 2024. And this is what we presented in the proposed 4-year budget. The key benefits to operating Blatchford Gate Station include providing greater access to the industrial and residential neighborhoods east of the station, but these are relatively low-density neighborhoods currently, and meeting our commitments to Edmontonians to transition major infrastructure projects from construction to operations, and will also allow us to utilize the 1-year warranty period for the infrastructure and equipment. On the other hand, there are also trade-offs with opening Blatchford Gate Station, including service provision not aligning with our transit service standards and transit service policy, the projected lower ridership for the station due to the current state of development in Blatchford, and lower activity and natural surveillance in the area, which could lead to elevated security disorder risks and inappropriate use of the station. So in the second scenario, the opening of Blatchford Gate would be deferred until the criteria for service commencement is met. However, service would transition from the temporary Nate station to the new permanent Nate station in Q1 2024, since the temporary station has surpassed its useful life. The benefits of this scenario include better alignment with the transit service policy, lower operating costs associated with the Blatchford Gate station, and reducing the risks of security issues and inappropriate use of the Blatchford Gate station. The main trade-off in this scenario is that it removes our opportunity to test the infrastructure and equipment to use that 1-year warranty period. However, this risk may be offset by the cost savings from not operating the extension. So the last slide provides the summary of the annual net operating costs for the 2 scenarios. In scenario 1, the net operating requirement is 4.23 million and 20.2 FTEs starting in 2024. This includes funding for LRT operations, maintenance of the new stations, new tracks, utility complexes, signaling system, LRT catenary, substations, and the communications system. Safety and security staffing and equipment required to monitor the stations, as well as maintenance of the Nate Plaza, landscaping, snow removal, and traffic signals. In scenario 2, the net operating requirement is $2.43 million starting in 2024, which is a 42% cost reduction from scenario 1, and the FTE requirement also decreases to 12.2 FTEs. While the cost for the LRT operations is no longer required, some costs will still be incurred to maintain and secure the infrastructure and assets. For example, station maintenance of facility assets and utility complexes for the 2 new stations, maintaining the tracks and signals, safety and security costs in the ETS Control Center and Transit Peace officers. The Blatchford Gate Station in this scenario would be fenced, and therefore the Transit Peace officer costs are lower in this scenario. And as similar to the first scenario, still we'd need to maintain the Nate Plaza, the landscaping, and traffic signals, which is the same between the 2 scenarios. Both scenarios include positions to support safety and security, maintain the tracks, the vehicles and electrical systems, maintain the plaza, et cetera. If we go with scenario 2, administration will regularly assess the factors we need to support opening the extension, and when these factors are met, administration would return to council with a recommendation to fund the remaining operating costs. This assessment includes consideration of several factors aligned with the transit service policy and transit service standards, including the number of residents living within 800 meters of the station, number of employees working within 800 meters of the station, whether the greenhouse gas emissions reduction from operating the extension is greater than not operating, and partnership opportunities with neighboring institutions and organizations that could help support attracting ridership. So one of these options must be funded during the fall 2023 supplemental operating budget adjustment, and because the infrastructure project will be completed at the end of this year. Both options are going to be brought forward as part of the budget deliberations. Currently, scenario 1 is unfunded, and scenario 2 is presented as a funded service package. In conclusion, the last slide, we understand there are trade-offs for council considering making this decision, and we're here to answer any questions you may have to help inform your decision in the budget process. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. And I'm just going to look to the board. If anyone does have questions, if you wouldn't mind just getting your name on the board so we can determine if we're going to come back after lunch or if we can possibly extend by just 10 minutes here. Let's see. Do you have a lot of questions? Yeah.
Is administration able to stay?
Administration, are you able to stay for 10, 15 minutes? Yeah. Okay, I'll move to extend till 12:15. Yeah, good folks? Okay, with unanimous consent, we'll extend till 12:15. I will go first here with questions. I think you answered it in your very last slide. I was just wondering if you need any sort of direction to come back with one of the 2 options. It sounds like that is handled, so you don't need anything from committee today in terms of decisions.
We don't need a decision today. They'll both be in the budget, and then council will need to choose at that time.
Fabulous. Thank you. Councillor Wright.
Thank you. So we obviously haven't met the thresholds or anything of the policy, but I'm just wondering, we've talked about it before in other committee meetings about establishing transit service for the newer developing neighborhoods to sort of incentivize people to move in. Would that matter in this case?
I think the service standards currently we need, even just to introduce a local bus route in the peaks, we need a certain amount of population just to support that, and we don't have that yet in Blatchford. And of course, in this case, we're talking about opening an LRT with the much higher level of service than what we'd add to a new neighborhood.
But would that encourage home buyers to look in this area?
Mr. Robar.
Yeah, certainly the station being there now and already located there is going to be an incentive for anybody that's looking to kind of build near transit, and that was the intent of Blatchford to begin with. So having that built infrastructure already there and capable and ready to deliver services is a thing we don't have to do later on when the Blatchford builds out.
Okay. And how far right now, I know some of the standards are 800 meters to the nearest bus stop. Is that being met right now for those residents?
So the residents, most of the residents right now are adjacent to Kingsway, so there's service along Kingsway Avenue. there isn't really the critical mass of population yet to really warrant its own service in and of itself to serve that, the development within Blatchford.
Okay. And then I'm just wondering, the one thing I guess that does concern me is that warranty. Is there any way that we can sort of renegotiate that so we could get the 1-year warranty from the time we put it into service?
I might have to ask if Mr. Laughlin's here, but I think one point I'll make first is there's of course savings between the two scenarios, and we'll be testing and commissioning. So we will know that everything works as intended. We'll test and make sure everything functions before we, once it's handed over from construction.
Yeah, I don't think we can, but I think it's a manageable risk based on the type of installations or construction infrastructure that's been installed. And it gets kind of complicated because some items are 1 year, some items are 2 years, some items are 5 years. So trying to renegotiate an extension to all of those becomes very complicated, and I think we can manage the risks associated with this infrastructure.
Just on the operational side of things too, all of the equipment in that facility will still be running. We have to maintain the facility itself in an operational kind of context. So we'll know if the components of that system is functioning properly during that time. So in that sense, we'd still take advantage of those warranty opportunities if we have an issue with HVAC or something like that in the facility.
Okay, so right now we lose that 1 year, but if we delay it another 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years, you're saying we could lose those other warranty options?
Well, I think with this, it's sort of a cost-benefit approach, and based on current pressures, service, this is a manageable risk in terms of how we move forward. These are common systems. In the facility maintenance side, the ETS maintenance side, these are systems that we're dealing with on a regular basis and therefore manageable.
Okay, so we're used to this because we're used to other things too. Okay.
Oh yeah, this is an extension of existing system with, an existing line with existing systems.
Okay, that makes me feel better. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thanks, Councillor Wright. Councillor Stevenson.
Great. So the line itself will be fully commissioned and tested, and then the warranties are just sort of for some of the physical objects. Okay, perfect.
Correct.
Great. So Mr. Lumsden, I think I heard you say there will be a solid path that will connect existing Blatchford residents to the NAIT station?
That's correct, by the end of this construction season.
By the end of this construction
assuming
season.
It doesn't become zero tomorrow. Yes.
Perfect. And we have budget for snow clearing. That path will be kept clear. I'm seeing nods from operations. Excellent. That is wonderful news, very welcome and exciting news for the neighborhood. Just in terms of, to use a Blatchford pun, but the runway needed to extend the service up to Blatchford Gate. So let's say there was a land deal that came through, a condition of sale was that we did fund the operations of that. What are the timelines? Did those line up? How quickly could we potentially commit to that funding and move forward with opening it up? Demothballing, I guess.
So we would be able to do it, I think, very quickly, and a service change very shortly after that. There is not, the costs for the additional station are mainly around additional maintenance costs and peace officers, and I think we could look to ramp those up and open services in a quick timeline. Mr. Robar, did you want to?
Yeah, I think that's the good thing about having the station in place is that, it provides us a lot of flexibility and options.
Great.
And it's already commissioned, so we should be able to respond pretty quickly on the transit service side of the fence if that happens.
Just in case that does become an opportunity, I wouldn't want to see that as a limiting factor with future land sales. So great to know we could act on that fairly quickly.
The timing of land sales, and Tom can speak to this in more detail, gives us the ability to activate the timeframes needed for ETS to operationalize.
Excellent, excellent. Last one, just want to confirm we have budgeted for the decommissioning of the current NAIT station, the temporary NAIT station?
Yeah, part of the project.
Excellent. No further questions. So pleased that option 2 is coming forward as the funded option at budget. That's one less agonizing decision to have to make, so thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Councillor Stevenson. Councillor Rice.
Just very quick question regarding the NAIT station. So for the option 1, and then we still use the existing NAIT station. And for option 2, that means we have to build the new one new permanent late station. Is that understanding correct?
In both scenarios, we're using the new NATE station. It's already built. It's almost done, so we'll be moving into that regardless with option 1 or 2.
So then I'm a little bit confused, and because I received the question from my constituents. So then what about the existing NATE?
That existing NATE station was built as a temporary station, so it will be decommissioned as part of the capital project to build the Metro line extension.
And how much cost for us to build that temporary station?
Don't have that at hand, Councillor Rice. I don't know if anybody online does. This was done many years ago, and all in consideration that it would be a temporary station until we receive funding to extend the line.
Okay, so that station was originally built as a purpose of temporary station.
That's correct, yes. And some of the material that's actually on that station is something that can be salvaged by ETS for future use.
Yeah, and it's important to note too with the NATE station, the temporary station is built to a 4-car platform, and the new NATE station is actually built to a 5-car platform. So it offers us an opportunity to increase capacity as demand builds.
Okay, so my question is not about the extension, it's about concern about we build something and then a few years later we have to rebuild something. So where's that money and from, and how much money we spend it? I would like to see that information.
So we can certainly provide that, but it was clearly articulated in the approval of the original Metro line Metro line construction. It wasn't an extension; it was new construction. That it was going to be a temporary station and approved as such, all with the understanding that once funding was in place to extend into Blatchford, that it would be demolished, salvaged, and repurposed to the new station. But we can certainly provide the costs associated with that, and they are captured in both the capital of the original line and the capital of the line that's under construction, almost into operations.
Okay, thank you. That's only my question.
Thanks, Councillor Rice. One quick one. Just wondering, I know sounds like there's been some conversations with the NATE stakeholders in the surrounding area there. Are they looped into this conversation as well?
I will say I did speak to some people at NATE about it and trying to activate some of the space around it in a temporary way. People at NATE have changed, so I'm having conversations with the new people as well.
Okay, yes. That's good. As long as we're in touch with them and they're part of this. Yep. Okay, that's great. So I will, not seeing anyone else on the board, move the recommendation that the September 20th, 2023 City Operations Report C001-885 be received for information. So any additional questions, comments? Great, let's vote.
We have all the votes.
Please display the vote. That is carried. Thanks so much, everyone, and thanks for sticking around a little bit extra. Much appreciated. We are adjourned, of course.